Welcome once again to another video of mine. I hope you enjoy my other videos. Today's lesson will be on the parts of the flower. Right, let's begin. So the flower has both male and female parts. Now let's begin by talking about the male part of the flower. The male part of the flower is what we call the stamen. The stamen. It is made up of the filament that holds up the anther. Right, the filament is like a stalk, and the anthers is like a sac. The anthers contains the pollen, right? So you find the pollen grain within the anthers. The pollen, they are like the sperm of the flower. Now, the other part of the flower, which is under the male part, is the pollen grain. So as I said, the pollen grain contains the sperm. The flowers that have male parts and no female parts are called staminate. Staminate, right? So the male part of the flower, we call it the stamen. The stamen, as you've seen already. So staminate or staminate, that is flowers that have only male parts, but no female parts, right? Okay. Now let's talk about the female part of the flower. The female part of the flower is what we call the pistil. Pistil. The carpel is a basic unit of the female reproductive organ. All right. A pistil may consist of one or more carpel. So think about a carpel like the uterus, right? Type of thing, in the female. The carpel is composed of a stigma, style, and ovary. So you have the stigma, the style, and the ovary. The stigma is the sticky tissue at the end of the pistil that is receptive to pollen. So it's the part of the flower that the pollen attaches to, very sticky parts. So when the pollen is taken by, let's say, a bee or butterfly, right, or any other insect or even the wind for human beings, right, it can be transferred to the pollen it can be transferred to the stigma, right? And because it's sticky, it sticks to it and then begins to grow through the pistil. The style is the rod-shaped part located below the stigma, right? The ovary is a swollen base at the end of the style that contains the eggs. Flowers that have female parts and no male parts are called pistillate, right? So remember for the word pistil, that's the female part of the flower called a pistil. So flowers that have only female parts are called pistillates. Now, let's look at other parts of the flower. The petals are the leaf-like structures of the flower. They are usually colorful and they attract animals and insects for pollination. Some plants that do not have colorful flowers include corn, rice, wheat, and soybeans. they don't have colorful flowers. The petals may be fused together and form what we call the corolla, right? Fused petals from the corolla. The sepals are the green leaf-like structures beneath the petals. They support the petals and protect the flower before it opens. The calyx refers to sepals that are fused together. Now let's talk about the perianth. Now the perianth refers to both the petals and the sepals. The sepals and the petals form the perianth. In some plants, there's not a clear distinction between the petals and the sepals. When this occurs, the parts of the perianth are called tepals. Tepals, all right? So the tepals means that you cannot distinguish clearly between the petals and then the sepals. An example of plants with tepals are tulip flowers and many monocots. Some flowers have modified leaves at the base of the flower called the bracts. Bracts. The bracts may be green or colorful. You can see the picture over there. You know, it's a colorful modified leaf. The pedicle or the pedicel of the flower stem. The receptacle is the portion of the pedicel that holds the flower parts, right? The flower parts. So the pedicel is the flower stem. And then the receptacle is a portion of the pedicel that holds the flower parts. Now let's look at some types of flowers. There's a flower called a perfect flower. When the flower is said to be perfect, what does that mean? A flower with both male and female parts are known as perfect flowers. And they have imperfect flower. So imperfect flower, a flower that is missing a male or female parts. Then you have a complete flower, a flower that has sepals, petals, pistils, and stamens are known as complete flowers. And they have incomplete flowers. Incomplete flowers. If a flower is missing any one of the sepals, petals, or pistil or stamen, then it's an incomplete flower, right? So know the difference between perfect flower, mainly based on male and female parts. So both male and female parts perfect, one part male or female part missing, one of them missing, then you have imperfect flower. But when we talk about complete flower, it means that all the different parts of the flower, which the petals, the pistil, the stamen, sepals, we have all that, that's complete. If one of them is missing, then it's an incomplete flower. Now let's talk about monoecious plants. These are plants that have male and female flowers on one plant, right? So they have male and female flowers on one plant. They have flowers with flower parts in multiples of 3, right? The monoecious plants. Examples are corn, cucumbers, and oaks. They are examples of monoecious plants. They have the male and female flowers on one plant, right? And they have flowers with flower parts in multiples of 3. We also have plants known as dioecious plants. So dioecious plant, what are they? They have male and female flowers on separate plants, right? So like, look at the word dioecious. Di means 2. So male, female on separate plants. Whilst we go back to monoecious, mono is 1. So that's why I have the male and female part on the same plant, right? So that's how you can distinguish between the two. So the dioecious plant, they have flowers with flower parts in multiples of 4 or 5. So remember the monoecious, the one you just talked about, has flowers in multiples of 3. When you come to dioecious, they have multiples of 4 or 5. What are examples of these? Example would be like soybeans, asparagus, kiwi, and hemp. They are examples of dioecious plants. Now I want to move on to another topic to look at the types of inflorescence. Inflorescence refers to flower clusters, which depends on the stem's branching system, right? So flower clusters. Solitary flower. This refers to only one flower on a stem. So some flowers have only one flower on the stem. So they are solitary flowers. Okay. Examples will be the tulip, narcissus, and rose. Now the peduncle. What's the peduncle? It is the main stem of an inflorescence, the main stem for inflorescence. The pedicel branch from the peduncle and supports individual flowers. Classification based on the sequence of flowering within the flower cluster. We have 2 types. We have determinate flower and indeterminate flower. So this is a classification based on the sequence of flowering within the flower cluster. Let's look at a determinate flower. So the first flower to open is at the apex of the stem, and the progression of flowering is downward or outward. Example, Liactris, the Kalanko, and then the African violet. Indeterminate flower. It is the last flower to open its terminal on the main axis, and the progression of flowering is inward or upward. Examples, racemes, coriums, heads, the umbels, freesia, cineraria, snapdragon, and stalk. They are all examples of indeterminate flower. All right, classification based on arrangement of flower. So these are the some of the types that you see. The cyme, spike, rhizome, peduncle, corium, umbel, spandex, catkin, and then the head or capitulum. The spike and the peduncle types of inflorescence are the most common among the monocots. So let's look at some diagrams on this. So the cyme, they are usually flat-topped inflorescence, as you can see here. And then the dicassium cymes, they bear terminal flowers on peduncles with a pair of branches that produce lateral flowers. And the cymes may be simple or compound. Monocassium cymes have terminal flowers, and below it, monocassium cymes have one branch that produces a single lateral flower. Okay. So look at the picture down there. The terminal flower is the oldest. Examples, tomatoes, potatoes, and then Astumerius. They're all examples of this type of flower. Now let's look at a spike. So a spike is an elongated inflorescence with a central axis where sessile flowers are attached. Example would be the wheat and barley, ryegrass, wheatgrass, gladioli, and liatris. Okay, so the diagram is shown below. That's the arrangement of the flowers, spike arrangements. All right, let's talk about the rhizome. The rhizome is an elongated inflorescence with a central axis where simple pedicels of more or less equal length are attached. Examples would be foxtail millet, snapdragon, delphinium, scotch broom, and stock. Look at the diagram. So that's a diagram of the rhizome right there. We move on to the panicle. So what's a panicle? A panicle is an elongated inflorescence with a central axis where there are branches that are themselves branched. So look at how the diagram looks like. Okay, branches that are also branched. Example, the rice, oats, Sudan grass, Kentucky bluegrass, tall, fescue, Timothy, grain, sorghum, astabe, and begonia. All right, we move on to the corium. The corium is a short and broad, flat-topped, indeterminate inflorescence with a main vertical axis and a pedicel or branches of unequal length. The outer flowers open first. Example is the yarrow. Okay, so check out the diagram below. Right, now look at the umbel. The umbel is an inflorescence with several branches arising from a common point. Look at the diagram below. So the branches arise from a common point. A simple umbel consists of flowers with single pedicels. Compound umbels have secondary branching in the form of pedicels at the end of a ray. Example, Queen Anne's lace or the amaryllis. All right, look at the spandex. A spandex is a spike with a thickened fleshy axis, usually enveloped by a showy bracts called a spathe. Examples are killer lily and the anthurium. So look at the diagram below. You see the spathe, the spandex, and the peduncle. Spathe. The next type of inflorescence, that we look at is the catkin. The catkin is a spike, raceme, or cyme composed of unisexual flowers without petals and falling as a unit. Examples of the willows, alders, oak, and birch. Now, the capitulum on the head arrangement. So the capitulum is a rounded or flat-topped cluster of sessile flowers. Head inflorescence of the aster family resembles single flowers. These consist of centrally grouped flowers called disc flowers, encircled by ray flowers. Examples are the Gibera daisy, chrysanthemum, the sunflower, marigold, dahlia, straw flowers, and the cineraria. Okay, look at the diagram below. Right, so that brings us to the end of the part of the flower. I hope you really enjoyed this very well. See you in my next videos. Bye-bye.